Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
But we didn't have our radio on at home. I didn't know about it until Monday in school. I was in 8th grade, and right across the road was Dickinson High, and they called us into the study hall, us 8th graders into, because next year we'd be going to school, and announced the war. And I thought, well, I should get in. I think it was a matter of patriotic. I really felt I should be doing something other than working in the shipyards. I wasn't old enough. I sent my dad a telegram and I sent my sister a telegram. I got in, and when whoever sent the telegram to vouch for me that I could go in the service underage, I guess I was gung-ho to get into the war. Really, I was. The shipyards was fascinating to me because to see these ships, I'd never been on the ocean before, to see these destroyers. I knew a destroyer inside out. I could walk around blindfolded and tell you where I was at. So it was my ambition when I'm in the Navy, I want to be on a destroyer. When I got in the Navy, in '44, we were in the invasion of the Philippines, 2 invasions of the Philippines in the Marshall Islands, and so the war was full bore. I went to boot camp in Farragut, Idaho, which was a naval training station. Farragut was located on Lake Pend Oreille, or Pend Oreille, whichever way you pronounce it. The Indian name, I think, is Pend Oreille, and I think the name most people said Pend Oreille. The Indians named Farragut, Idaho, Fever Valley. They say Mrs. Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt, picked the spot. Lake Pend Oreille is a big lake. I think it's got a shoreline, I quote by memory, I'm going to say 500 and some miles around. It's deep, a deep lake. It's cold, miserable. We were out on boats, whale boats, learning how to row a whaleboat in big waves. I never drew mess hall duty. Never had to do that. Everybody seemed like I talked to the Navy was in the mess hall or wash dishes. I never did. I was guard duty with a gun. I had to patrol the outside of the fence perimeter at night. I had the night duty. And I walked up around the fence area, around by the woods, and cold and miserable. But we dressed for it, though. You first go into boot camp until you go to the training. You learn how to shoot a rifle. You used wooden rifles, is right. And then when you go to gunnery, then you go to gunnery school. In boot camp, you learn how to shoot and how to disarm a rifle and break it down and put it together. I graduated in 6 weeks, became a full-fledged boot. The water was really cold and miserable, wind, and you're out there rowing, and you wonder, well, what are you going to learn from this? You wonder the purpose of it, But see, the thing, if you ever got sunk on a ship, you get into whaleboats to get away from the ship, and that's part of the thing. Sometimes it all comes together after a while. Sometimes it's vague, when it's like growing up, come down with scarlet fever. So I didn't graduate with my class. I graduated, but I went out with the whole class because I was in sick bay. So then I went and signed a duty again after I got out of sick bay and given leave, 15-day leave, and got sick on the train. Got rheumatic fever and got home in Dickinson and went to the hospital, and they transferred me to V-12 Navy flight, which was in Dickinson. They had transferred me in there to be able for the Navy to pay me for my hospital bill. So I laid in the hospital there for I don't know how many days, and then they shipped me back to Farragut, Idaho. I was on a General R.L. Howze. It was a troop transport. I was assigned to it. I wasn't as a troop. I was assigned to the General R.L. Howze, and so I went to the officer and asked him, are we going over to where we're going? Well, I couldn't tell you. There's 3,000 aboard our ship. I remember we couldn't sleep below decks. It was so hot, but the upper decks were all laid on sea bags and trying to find a spot. And so then you go down, and it was hot, miserable. We were 28 days going over, I think, something like that. After we left Pearl Harbor, we were zigzagging, for submarines, because we had destroyer escorts escorting us. We got to New Guinea, and I asked to be assigned to a fighting ship from the General Isle House. And they transferred me to the Morrison, the destroyer Morrison. And then they were asking for a fireman. They said, "Fireman first class, Christensen." So I reported for duty up on the gangplank, and on the deck. And I said, "No, I'm not a fireman, I'm a seaman." "No, wrong Christensen." So I went back, and the boat took me back to the house, and I don't have the exact recollection of how many days. It seemed like 3, 4, or 5. I don't remember, but it was hit. We got a report. The radio man had said the Morrison was hit, and then I think, well, how lucky I was. In fact, my gear I got my gear back, but my orders were staying on. My orders were still on the Morrison, and so that was complications there. But I wasn't missing in action, so I asked for Simon, and they sent the aircraft carrier to the USS Nassau. I was a seaman. I was in the 1st Division, and as a job as a seaman was to hang over the side of the ship, or scrape paint, or take emery cloth and shine up the railings. I wasn't a person to be status quo, so I worked my way to find out how I could. So I studied the manuals, talked to people that were in charge, and see what we could do. And I took my test for seaman, 2nd class, 1st class. Then I took a test and studied to be a coxswain, which is one grade lower than a boatswain mate. And then the boatswain mate got transferred, and I took over the division. So I became head of the division. The only one ahead of me was either an ensign or a lieutenant. I think he was an ensign, and he made lieutenant, and I was head of the division. Meanwhile, I got a hold of the chaplain. I wanted to start my high school. I went up to chaplain, and we started whenever I had a chance, I'd go up to the chaplain's office, and he'd give me, we'd read books and tests and stuff, and get my GED. Well, that went on for 2 years.